My dad's bratty new stepdaughter viciously bullied me at his wedding, not knowing I was about to be her stepsister. I arrived at the hotel early with my new stepmother's something blue, planning to surprise her before the ceremony. We'd been close ever since she and my dad got together, and she even picked me to be her maid of honor instead of her own daughter Rafaela, who I'd never actually met. But when she walked in, I recognized her right away. Ratty extensions and fake tan and all. I'd lost 60 pounds since the last family photo my dad had shared, and my hair was now blonde instead of brunette, so she didn't realize I was the girl who was about to be her new sister. "Excuse me, what the hell are you doing in here?" she demanded, looking me up and down with disgust. "This is a private bridal suite for family and invited guests only. How did you even get past security?" Before I could explain, she called out, "Girls, we have a problem." Some random woman broke into the suite. I tried to say, but she cut me off immediately. And honestly, part of me wanted to see what kind of person my new stepsister really was before she knew who I was. "Oh my God, look at your dress," Rafaela said, circling me like a predator. "Did you get that at Goodwill? It's so pathetic when poor people try to sneak into nice events. You probably saw the wedding announcement online and thought you could pretend to belong here." 2 other bridesmaids came in and she announced, "Look at this tragic woman trying to blend in with that awful dress and those palest shoes. It's actually sad." When I said I was here for the wedding, she laughed and said, "You're not on the guest list. I'm the bride's daughter and I know every single person invited. You're probably one of those psycho wedding crashers who tries to steal gifts or food. What's your scam? Pretending to be someone's plus one?" Rafaela's posse started filming me with their phones, and I realized if I identified myself now, this video of me dripping with humiliation would exist forever. She grabbed my purse off the table and dumped it out, my dead mother's pearl necklace clattering across the floor. "Let's see what you're trying to steal." "Oh look, cheap drugstore makeup and a phone with a cracked screen. Definitely not someone who belongs at a $100,000 wedding." She kicked my mother's necklace and said, "Fake pearls too. How embarrassing." When I bent to pick them up, she stepped on my hand. "Security is on their way," she announced, though she hadn't called anyone. "But first, tell us who you really are. My new stepsister Georgia is supposed to be here and you're taking up space meant for actually important people? Are you obsessed with the groom? Did you see my mom with her rich fiancé and decide to ruin their day?" She pushed me backward, and I stumbled into the champagne table. I could have said, "I'm Georgia," but the words stuck in my throat watching her invoke my name while being so cruel. One friend suggested maybe I was confused, but Rafaela got angrier. "Don't defend her. She's probably mentally ill. Look at her. She's not even denying it. She's just standing there like a creep." She got in my face and said, "Georgia is the maid of honor, and when she gets here, we're going to laugh about the crazy woman who tried to infiltrate the wedding." She picked up a champagne bottle and started shaking it. "You know what? You need to learn what happens to wedding crashers." She popped it and sprayed it all over me, soaking my dress and hair completely. "Oops! Now you really look like trash. Street trash covered in alcohol. Perfect." The other girls laughed and took pictures while I stood there dripping, thinking how my dad would feel if I caused a scene right before his ceremony. When I didn't leave, she got on her phone and actually called hotel security. "We have an intruder in the penthouse bridal suite. She's unstable and refusing to leave. She's probably dangerous, might be on drugs. Please hurry." She smiled at me and said, "They're going to arrest you. This is a felony, trespassing and attempted theft. Your life is about to be ruined." She grabbed scissors from the makeup table and came toward me. "Actually, let's make sure you can never crash another wedding." She grabbed my hair and actually cut off a chunk of it. "There. Now you look as crazy on the outside as you are on the inside. When Georgia gets here, the actual maid of honor, I'll tell her how I protected the wedding from a psycho stalker who was probably going to hurt someone." At this point, I was in too much shock to speak. That's when the door to the adjoining room opened, and my stepmother walked out in her robe, hair and makeup perfect. "Georgia! There you are. I was wondering when my maid of honor would arrive. Sweetheart, what happened to your hair?" Rafaela's hands still held the scissors and my cut hair as she stared between us, her face draining of all color as she realized she'd just assaulted her new stepsister. My stepmother's eyes went from the scissors to the chunk of blonde hair on the floor, to my butchered head, and her whole body went rigid. She rushed across the room and grabbed my face in her hands, turning my head to check my scalp for cuts while Rafaela stood there frozen with my hair still tangled in her fingers. The champagne that had been dripping off my dress was pooling on the white carpet and making these little splashing sounds every time I moved. My stepmother's fingers shook as she touched the jagged edges where Rafaela had hacked through my hair, and she whispered something I couldn't hear at first. Then she said it louder. "What did you do to Georgia?" And her voice cracked on my name. Rafaela's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out, and the scissors in her hand started shaking so bad I thought she might drop them. Sharon took a step backward toward the door, and Chiara did the same thing, both of them still holding their phones but not recording anymore. My dad must have heard the noise because he appeared in the doorway wearing his tux with the bow tie still undone, and this huge smile on his face that disappeared the second he saw me. He took in everything at once. Me soaked in champagne with chunks of hair missing, Rafaela holding the scissors, his bride with tears starting to form in her eyes. "Georgia, sweetheart, are you hurt?" he asked and started toward me, but my stepmother was already examining my scalp again. Before I could say anything, she spun around to face Rafaela, and her voice got hard in a way I'd never heard before. "Explain yourself right now," she said, and Rafaela finally found her voice and started talking so fast the words ran together. She kept saying she didn't know it was me, that she thought I was breaking in, that I looked different and wouldn't say who I was. Sharon quietly moved her hand to her purse and slipped her phone inside while Ciara kept looking between everyone like she wanted to disappear. Blake showed up then, the wedding planner in his perfect gray suit, and I saw his professional smile freeze when he took in the scene. He pulled out his phone immediately and started texting someone while walking further into the room to assess the damage. "We need to push the ceremony back," he said quietly, and then louder when no one responded. My stepmother reached out slowly and took the scissors from Rafaela's hand, setting them on the makeup table before telling Blake to call hotel security right away. She guided me to the couch and sat me down, her fingers going back to my hair to examine how bad the damage was. Every time she touched the cut edges, her hands trembled worse, and I could see her trying not to cry. Rafaela suddenly came alive again and started pacing back and forth, talking about how this was all just a big misunderstanding. She kept saying I should have told her who I was, that I was acting weird, that anybody would have done what she did if they thought someone was breaking into their mom's wedding. My dad's face got darker with every word, and he moved to stand between me and Rafaela like he was protecting me, even though she wasn't holding the scissors anymore. Julius from hotel security arrived faster than I expected. This tall guy in a dark uniform who took one look at the room and immediately started taking control. He asked everyone to stay calm and started moving people to different parts of the suite, putting Rafaela near the window and keeping me on the couch with my dad and stepmother. The whole feeling in the room changed when he walked in because suddenly this wasn't just family drama anymore, but something that might involve the police. I hadn't said much since my stepmother walked in, but when Julius asked what happened, I finally found my voice. "I want to file a complaint for assault," I said, and watched Rafaela's face go white. She started crying immediately, these big dramatic sobs while saying, "I couldn't do this. Not today. Not on her mom's wedding day." My stepmother closed her eyes like she was in physical pain, caught between her daughter who had done something terrible and doing what was right. Julius turned to Sharon and Ciara and asked if they had witnessed what happened, and both of them nodded slowly. He asked them not to leave and said he'd need statements from them and wanted to know if anyone had recorded anything. I saw Kiara's hand move toward her purse without thinking about it, and Julius noticed it too. Blake stepped closer to Julius and started whispering something about needing to handle the vendor calls immediately. His phone was already buzzing nonstop, and I could see text messages piling up on his screen. He walked over to the window and started making calls one after another, his voice calm and professional as he told people there were technical difficulties with the sound system. Julius turned to me and asked if I had any physical injuries that needed documenting. I held out my hand where Rafaela had stepped on it and showed him the red marks across my knuckles. Then I picked up my mother's pearl necklace from where I'd gathered it off the floor earlier and pointed out the scratches that weren't there this morning. Julius took out his phone and photographed my hand from different angles, then took close-ups of the damaged pearls. He made notes in a small notebook about property damage and asked me how much the necklace was worth. I told him it was priceless because it belonged to my dead mother, but the insurance value was around $3,000. Blake was still on the phone telling someone the ceremony would start 90 minutes late, and I heard him mention that guests were already arriving downstairs. My dad moved closer to me and put his hand on my shoulder, asking quietly if I was really okay or if I needed medical attention. I shook my head, but my stepmother came over and asked Blake to give us a moment alone. She guided me to the corner of the room near the bathroom door, while everyone else stayed busy with their tasks. Her eyes were full of tears, and she kept touching my ruined hair gently. She asked what I needed from her right now, and I told her straight out that Rafaela needed to face real consequences, not get away with assault just because it was a wedding day. My stepmother nodded slowly, and I could see how much it hurt her to hear that, but she understood. Rafaela suddenly started moving toward us from across the room, but Julius stepped right in front of her and held up his hand. He told her she needed to maintain distance during an active investigation and couldn't approach the victim. Rafaela's face went red and she started yelling that this was ridiculous, that I was ruining everything on purpose just to hurt her mother. Sharon shifted uncomfortably and moved away from her friend, clearly not wanting to be associated with the outburst. Kiara walked up to Julius quietly and tapped his arm to get his attention. She said she had something important to show him and pulled out her phone. I watched her unlock it and show him the screen, explaining that she'd recorded the whole thing from when I first walked in. She said what Rafaela did was wrong, and she was willing to share the video as evidence even though they were friends. Rafaela stared at Ciara with her mouth open like she couldn't believe the betrayal. Blake ended another call and came back to the group with sweat on his forehead. He announced that we could push the ceremony back 1 hour maximum before we'd lose our venue slot completely. The reception hall had another wedding after hours and couldn't accommodate any longer delay. My stepmother's face showed every bit of stress as she tried to decide whether to go ahead with the wedding or postpone everything. The weight of choosing between her wedding day and dealing with what her daughter had done was visible in how her hands shook. I couldn't stand there anymore watching everyone deal with Rafaela's mess, so I excused myself to the bathroom. The second I closed the door behind me, I saw my reflection in the mirror, and the tears finally came. My hair looked like someone had taken a chainsaw to it with one whole section missing, and the rest uneven and jagged. I sat on the closed toilet seat and sobbed into my hands, letting out all the shock I'd been holding in. A gentle knock came at the door, and a woman's voice asked if she was in the right place. She said her name was Megan Hicks, and Blake had called her as an emergency stylist to help with a hair situation. Her kindness in that moment, the soft way she spoke through the door, broke through the last of my control, and I cried harder. I opened the door and let her in, watching her professional smile falter when she saw the damage. She immediately started examining my hair, running her fingers through it to see what she had to work with. She opened her case full of scissors and styling tools and told me she could make this work, that she'd seen worse and fixed it. While she started evening out the edges, I could hear voices getting louder in the main room. My dad's voice carried through the door as he told Rafaela her behavior was completely inexcusable, and she'd shown everyone exactly what kind of person she really was. Rafaela's dramatic sobs followed immediately, the kind that sounded more like performance than real crying. Megan kept working steadily, not commenting on the drama outside as she shaped what was left of my hair into something that looked intentional instead of attacked. Julius knocked on the bathroom door and said he needed to speak with me when I was ready. Megan told him we needed 10 more minutes, and he said he'd wait outside with his supervisor who'd just arrived. She worked faster but still carefully, creating a short pixie cut that actually looked pretty good considering what she started with. The door opened again, and Julius came in with an older man in the same security uniform who introduced himself as Julius's supervisor. They had papers in their hands, and Julius explained that if I wanted to press charges, I needed to sign the forms now. He said the hotel took assault very seriously and had a zero-tolerance policy for violence on their property. The supervisor added that with the evidence they had, charges would definitely stick, and Rafaela could be arrested today. The decision felt huge knowing it would happen at my dad's wedding, but I picked up the pen anyway. Through the bathroom door, we heard my stepmother's voice, clear and firm despite the emotion in it. She announced that the ceremony would proceed in 45 minutes, but would be scaled down to immediate family only. The reception was postponed indefinitely, until they could reorganize everything properly. Then her voice got harder as she told Rafaela she would not be participating as a bridesmaid, or in any part of the ceremony. The silence that followed felt heavy with the reality of consequences finally landing. Sharon knocked on the bathroom door and asked if she could come in for a second. I nodded and she slipped inside, watching Megan work on evening out the jagged edges of my hair. She stood there fidgeting with her phone for a moment before saying she was sorry for not stopping Rafaela when things got out of hand. She admitted they all knew Rafaela could be mean sometimes, but never expected her to go that far with the scissors and champagne. Her hands shook as she talked, and I could see she was genuinely upset about what happened. Megan kept working steadily, using her thinning shears to blend the shorter pieces into something that looked intentional. My dad's phone started buzzing, and he answered it, putting it on speaker when the family attorney's voice came through. The attorney told me to document everything right now while it was still fresh in my memory. He said to take photos of the red mark on my hand where Rafaela stepped on me and get pictures of my damaged dress and mother's scratched pearls. Dad grabbed his phone and started taking pictures of my hand and the champagne stains, while the attorney explained we needed written statements from all the witnesses immediately. Through the door, we could hear Rafaela's voice getting louder as she talked to her mother. She was saying this whole thing was my fault for not telling her who I was right away. She claimed I deliberately let her embarrass herself because I wanted to make her look bad at the wedding. Her voice got more shrill as she insisted I was manipulative and had planned this whole thing to ruin her relationship with her mother. My stepmother's voice cut through sharp and cold, telling Rafaela to stop making excuses for assault. Blake appeared at the bathroom door looking stressed and holding his tablet. He said several guests downstairs had noticed the security presence and were asking questions about the delay. He was trying to contain the situation, but needed to know what to tell people who were getting worried something serious had happened. The hotel manager had just arrived personally to check on us, and wanted to make sure we had everything we needed. Blake said the manager was concerned about the hotel's reputation if word got out about an assault in the penthouse suite. Julius came back with more information about the charges. He explained that using scissors as a weapon made this assault with a deadly weapon, which was way more serious than simple battery. The charge could mean actual jail time, not just probation or community service. Rafaela must have heard him because her crying suddenly stopped and everything went quiet in the main room. Kiara walked over to Julius holding her phone and started transferring the video she'd recorded to his tablet. We all gathered around to watch it, even though I really didn't want to see myself getting humiliated again. The video showed everything clearly, from Rafaela dumping my purse to spraying me with champagne to cutting my hair with the scissors. My stepmother watched for about 30 seconds before she had to leave the room, her hand over her mouth. Seeing her daughter attack me on screen was different from just hearing about it. The attorney's voice came through the phone speaker again after we'd watched the video. He said with this kind of evidence plus multiple witnesses, criminal charges would definitely stick if we pursued them. He also mentioned we could file a civil suit for emotional distress and property damage on top of the criminal case. Rafaela started breathing really fast, and someone said she needed to sit down before she passed out. My dad turned to me and said that no matter what I decided about pressing charges, Rafaela wasn't welcome in our home anymore. He said real family doesn't treat each other this way, and she'd shown she couldn't be trusted around me. His voice was firm and angry in a way I'd never heard before. My stepmother came back into the room with tears running down her face, but she didn't argue with his decision. Blake cleared his throat and said he'd managed to reorganize the ceremony with just immediate family and closest friends. The big reception with 200 guests would have to be canceled completely. He showed us the numbers on his tablet, and the lost deposits alone were over $30,000. The catering, the band, the flowers for 200 people, all of it was non-refundable at this point. My stepmother just nodded and said she understood, though her face went pale at the financial loss. Megan stepped back and handed me a mirror to see what she'd done with my hair. She'd transformed the hack job into a short pixie cut that actually looked pretty cute, even though it wasn't anything like what I'd planned for the wedding. The sides were super short, but she'd left some length on top that she styled with product to give it texture. She'd worked actual magic with what was left after Rafaela's attack. I thanked her and started crying because this small act of kindness after everything else just hit me hard. She squeezed my shoulder and started packing up her tools, saying she was glad she could help make something good out of a bad situation. Julius pulled out his tablet and started explaining my options while everyone watched. I could press charges right now and have Rafaela arrested before the ceremony. I could file a report for documentation without immediate arrest. I could handle this as a family matter and let the hotel keep their evidence on file. He made it clear the hotel had enough proof regardless of what I chose. The security cameras caught everything from multiple angles, plus we had Chiara's video. Rafaela sat on the couch with her head in her hands while Julius talked. Sharon moved closer to Chiara, and I heard her whispering, "They should leave now." She said this wasn't their problem, and they didn't need to get involved. Chiara shook her head and said they were witnesses who needed to do the right thing. Sharon grabbed her purse and said she wasn't getting dragged into court over this. Chiara told her to think about what Rafaela did to me with those scissors. Their friendship was breaking apart right in front of us. My stepmother came back into the room looking more composed, but her eyes were red. She walked straight to me and took my hands in hers. She said she supported whatever decision I made about pressing charges. She admitted Rafaela had never faced real consequences for her behavior before. Her voice cracked when she said maybe this was what her daughter needed. She looked older somehow, like the weight of her failures as a mother had aged her. I told Julius I wanted to file a police report, but asked if Rafaela could stay at the hotel. I didn't want her arrested and taken away before the ceremony. Julius checked with his supervisor on the phone and said they could accommodate that. Rafaela would need to stay in a separate room with hotel security supervision. It was more kindness than she'd shown me when she was cutting my hair. The makeup artist came over and started working on my face, which was streaked with tears. My dad went down to the parking garage to get my backup dress from his car. The champagne-soaked one was completely ruined and smelled like alcohol. Everyone pretended not to notice I was basically starting over from scratch. Megan worked quickly to fix my makeup while Blake made more phone calls. Julius explained the terms to Rafaela, who nodded without looking up. She agreed to the supervised isolation rather than being taken to the police station immediately. 2 security guards came to escort her to a small office on another floor. She stood up slowly and looked at her mother one last time. Her face was desperate and pleading, but my stepmother just nodded. Rafaela followed the guards out without saying anything else. Blake came over with his phone showing me the updated timeline. Guests were starting to ask about the delay and getting restless downstairs. He told them there was a minor medical emergency, but everything was under control. He said the truth would create more drama than anyone needed right now. Some guests were already posting on social media asking what was happening. Blake had his assistant monitoring the post to make sure nothing got out. My stepmother sat down next to me while Megan finished my makeup. She asked if I still wanted to be her maid of honor after everything. I told her yes because Rafaela didn't get to take that from me too. She hugged me tightly and whispered apologies for what her daughter had done. She said she should have seen this coming and done something sooner. I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged her back. We had 30 minutes until the modified ceremony would start. I helped my stepmother with the final touches on her dress and veil. We didn't talk about Rafaela or what would happen after today. The silence felt weird but also necessary after all the chaos. My dad came back with my backup dress, which was simpler than the ruined one. It was navy blue instead of the lavender one soaked in champagne. Everyone turned away while I changed behind a screen in the corner. The new dress fit fine even though it wasn't what I'd planned. Sharon and Chiara were giving their written statements to Julius at the desk. They wrote down everything they saw from start to finish. Julius had them sign and date the papers for the official record. Sharon finished first and left without saying goodbye to anyone. Chiara came over to me before leaving and squeezed my hand. She whispered that she was sorry for everything that happened. She said Rafaela had always been mean, but never this bad. Their departure felt like another consequence Rafaela hadn't thought about. Blake checked his watch and said we needed to head down for the ceremony now, or lose the venue completely. I walked downstairs with my dad holding my arm, while my stepmother followed with Blake making last-minute adjustments to her veil. The ceremony room looked huge with just 20 people scattered in the front rows instead of the 200 chairs they'd set up. My dad kept looking at me every few seconds while I stood next to his bride holding her bouquet. The empty spots where Rafaela and the bridesmaids should have been standing made everything feel weird and quiet. The officiant started the ceremony, and when my stepmother said her vows about blending our families with love and respect, her voice cracked and she had to pause. I saw my aunt dabbing her eyes with a tissue even though she didn't know what had happened upstairs. The ceremony ended quickly without all the readings and special music they'd planned. We took a few photos, but everyone looked stiff and uncomfortable. Julius came over while the photographer was packing up and quietly told us that Rafaela had been taken to the police station for processing. My stepmother just nodded and turned away without asking anything else. The big reception was canceled, so we just went to the hotel restaurant for dinner with the family members who'd stayed. Everyone picked at their food and made small talk about the weather and traffic. My dad kept his hand on mine the whole meal and squeezed it whenever someone tried to ask about Rafaela. After dinner, my stepmother asked me to come to the hallway for a minute. She handed me a check and said it would cover any medical bills, the dress, my mom's necklace repair, and therapy if I wanted it. She also said she was sorry for everything her daughter had done and that she should have seen this coming. I took the check and told her it wasn't her fault, but we both knew that wasn't completely true. 2 days later, I sat in a small office downtown while a prosecutor went through all the evidence Julius had collected. She showed me the video from Ciara's phone and the photos of my hand and my cut hair. She explained that Rafaela would be charged with assault and battery, which would go on her permanent record. The prosecutor said with the video evidence and witnesses, Rafaela would probably get probation and community service since it was her first offense. She asked if I was okay with that, or if I wanted to push for more serious charges. I said probation was fine because I just wanted this to be over. The next week, Rafaela's lawyer called about a plea deal where she'd do anger management classes and stay away from me for 2 years. The restraining order meant she couldn't come to any family events I was at or contact me in any way. I agreed because dealing with a trial would just drag everything out longer. My stepmother called me a few days later to say she'd signed herself and Rafaela up for family therapy. She said she realized she'd let Rafaela get away with too much for too long and they needed professional help. She told me Rafaela's mean behavior didn't start overnight, and she felt responsible for not stopping it sooner. 3 weeks after the wedding, my hair had grown out enough that the stylist could shape it into something normal looking. My mom's pearl necklace came back from the jeweler fixed, but I could still see tiny scratches when the light hit them a certain way. My hand had healed completely, but sometimes I still felt that phantom pressure from Rafaela's shoe. The physical stuff was getting better, but I kept having dreams about being trapped in that suite while everyone laughed at me. My dad started taking me out for dinner every Tuesday, just the two of us. He'd pick restaurants far from where we might run into anyone we knew, and we'd talk about everything except the wedding. One night, he told me he was proud of how I'd handled everything, and that Rafaela would never be allowed near me again. He said he'd make sure of it even if it meant missing some holidays with his wife. He also said he wished he'd protected me better, and that he should have known something was wrong when Rafaela didn't want to meet me before the wedding. These dinners became the best part of my week because it felt like I had my dad back without all the step-family drama. My stepmother kept sending me updates about Rafaela's community service at a homeless shelter and how therapy was going. She said Rafaela was learning about consequences and starting to understand how wrong she'd been. I never responded to these texts, but I didn't block her number either. Part of me hoped Rafaela would actually change, but mostly I just wanted to forget she existed. The wedding felt like it had happened years ago, even though it had only been a few weeks. Everyone in our family acted different now, more careful and quiet around each other. The family we were supposed to become at that wedding never really formed. Instead, we became something else, something broken that we were all trying to figure out how to live with. The first sign things were getting worse came when my phone started blowing up with notifications. Blake had tried to keep the wedding mess private, but someone posted the security footage online. Within hours, the video of Rafaela cutting my hair with scissors was everywhere. People I hadn't talked to in years were sending me links and asking if I was okay. The comments under the videos called Rafaela every name you could think of. Someone even made a meme out of her shocked face when my stepmother said my name. I turned off all my social media accounts and stopped checking my phone except for family. My coworkers kept bringing it up at lunch until I started eating at my desk. The local news picked up the story and ran it as a warning about wedding violence. Rafaela's face was all over town as the girl who attacked her stepsister with scissors. My stepmother started texting me every few days with updates I didn't ask for. She told me Rafaela was doing community service at a homeless shelter downtown. She said the judge made her work there 3 days a week for 6 months. She sent pictures of Rafaela serving food and cleaning tables. She wrote long messages about how Rafaela was learning what real problems looked like. She said Rafaela cried after her first day seeing families with kids living on the streets. I never wrote back, but I read every message. Part of me wanted to know she was actually facing consequences. Part of me just wanted to forget she existed. 6 weeks after the wedding, a thick envelope arrived from Rafaela's lawyer. Inside was a 3-page letter in Rafaela's handwriting. She wrote about growing up jealous of the attention her mom gave other people. She admitted she'd been mean to lots of people before me. She said she was embarrassed by how she acted and understood if I never wanted to see her again. She didn't make excuses or blame anyone else. She just said she was sorry and working on being better. I read it twice, then put it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I noticed she'd actually tried. My stepmother asked if we could meet for lunch a month later. We went to a quiet place outside town where nobody would recognize us. She looked older and tired, but she smiled when she saw me. We talked about safe topics at first, like the weather and work. Then she told me she'd been going to therapy too to understand how she'd raised someone capable of such cruelty. She said she realized she'd always made excuses for Rafaela instead of teaching her consequences. She never asked me to forgive Rafaela or even talk to her. She just worked on earning back my trust one lunch at a time. We started meeting every 2 weeks and slowly it got easier. 3 months after the wedding, Dad planned his birthday dinner at his favorite steakhouse. Just him, my stepmother and me at a corner table. Nobody mentioned Rafaela or asked why she wasn't there. We laughed about Dad's bad jokes and shared dessert. My stepmother gave him a watch and I gave him concert tickets. It felt like a real family dinner for the first time since the wedding. We took pictures together and everyone looked actually happy. That night felt like proof we could be okay without Rafaela around. A few weeks later, my stepmother called to say Rafaela had finished her counseling program. She said Rafaela wanted to apologize in person and make things right. I thought about it for a day, then called back. I told her I was glad Rafaela was getting help, but I wasn't ready to see her. Some things can't be fixed with apologies. My stepmother said she understood and wouldn't bring it up again. She kept her word and never pushed me about it. The hotel sent a formal letter apologizing for the security breach and trauma I experienced. They offered to pay for all my therapy sessions for a year. Julius called personally to check how I was doing. He said the hotel had changed their policies because of what happened. He sent flowers on my birthday with a note saying he hoped I was healing. The manager comped our entire wedding bill as an apology. These strangers showing kindness helped more than they probably knew. 6 months after that horrible day, I woke up one morning and realized I felt normal again. Dad and my stepmother seemed stronger after surviving the crisis. They'd learned to communicate better and set boundaries. I'd learned to protect myself and not feel guilty about it. Rafaela was still getting help somewhere far away. We were all in better places than we'd been at that wedding. The family we'd planned to be never happened, but what we built instead was honest and real. That's a wrap for now. Thanks for just hanging out and exploring all these little details with me. Until next time, subscribe for more content like this.